Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're tackling a really interesting and maybe kind of strange question. Can your feelings actually lie to you? I mean, think about it. My first reaction is, no way. A feeling is a feeling, right? It just is. But what if some of the most powerful emotions that guide us through life are, well, just illusions?
Okay, so where does an idea like this even come from? Well, it all goes back to a really core concept in evolutionary science. See, natural selection didn't shape our minds to see the truth clearly. Nope. It had one main job: make sure our genes got passed on to the next generation. It wasn't optimizing for our happiness or for a crystal clear picture of reality. It was optimizing for survival. And you know what? As we're about to find out, sometimes surviving means you gotta be a little delusional.
All right, so before we dive deeper, we've got to get on the same page. What do we even mean when we say a feeling is true or false?
So we're not just saying a feeling is false because it feels bad or it's uncomfortable. No, the definition here is a little more specific. We're looking at this through that evolutionary lens, right? So a true feeling is one that pushes you towards behavior that's actually good for your survival. And a false feeling? Well, that's the illusion. It's a trick that feels totally real, but it's leading you down a path that's ultimately bad for you. And with this framework, we can kind of become detectives of our own minds, which is pretty cool.
All right, let's look at our first category of illusion, obsolete urges. This is all about when good feelings go bad. Okay, let's talk about the sweet tooth. We all have it, right? For our ancestors, craving sugar was a brilliant survival instinct. It meant finding sweet, ripe fruit, which meant getting a ton of energy. That feeling was absolutely true. It kept you alive. But fast forward to today. Our brains are running that exact same program, but now we're surrounded by things like powdered donuts. The feeling, that intense craving, is identical, but the result? It's pretty terrible for our health. So that once super helpful urge has now become a false feeling in our modern world.
And this isn't just about what we eat, you know? The same kind of mismatch applies to our social emotions too. A perfect example? Road rage. You know that feeling, that instant, white-hot anger when someone cuts you off. Where on earth does that come from?
Well, there's this great quote from the Buddha about anger having a poison root and honeyed tip, and it fits perfectly. Think about it. Back in a small hunter-gatherer village, that kind of righteous rage was actually super useful. Your reputation was everything. If someone disrespected you, you had to make a big show of it to protect your standing. But on a highway today, surrounded by total strangers you'll never see again, that feeling is just as powerful, that's the honeyed tip, but it serves no purpose. It's pointless, even dangerous. It's all poison root. Just a leftover, obsolete urge. Okay, on to our second category, and this one is even more subtle. Helpful illusions. Feelings that were actually designed to be wrong.
So why would evolution design a feeling to be wrong? Well, here's the classic thought experiment that explains it perfectly. Imagine you're out for a hike in rattlesnake country. All of a sudden, you hear a rustle in the brush next to the trail. What happens? Your heart starts pounding, right? You jump back. You're terrified of a snake. You might even think you see one for a split second before you realize, oh, it's just a lizard.
So here's the reality of that situation. That feeling of pure terror is almost always a false positive. 99 times out of 100, that sound is just a harmless lizard, not a rattlesnake. But here's the thing. Natural selection doesn't play the odds like we do. It's doing a simple calculation. Being terrified and wrong 99 times is way, way better than being calm and dead just once. So that fear, even though it's technically an illusion most of the time, is an incredibly helpful illusion.
And this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. Your mind is not a truth-seeking machine. It is a survival machine, plain and simple. It's hardwired to make you feel and believe whatever it takes to get your genes into the future, even if that means making you anxious or making you see the world inaccurately.
So what happens when this kind of mind gets dropped into our crazy modern world? Let's talk about the modern mind's mismatch, and specifically, why we're all so anxious. Okay, so let's see if any of these sound familiar. Freaking out that you offended some stranger you're literally never going to see again. Cringing for days about that embarrassing thing you said on a bus. Feeling this massive pressure to make a perfect first impression at a party. Dreading public speaking, and the list goes on. See, our brains are still acting like we live in that tiny ancestral village, where every single person's opinion could make or break us. But in our world, which is full of strangers, these anxieties are usually just false alarms. They're just static, causing a lot of discomfort for no good survival reason. So that's the problem. What's the solution? If we know our feelings can be illusions, how do we see through them? Let's talk about a tool for clarity:
Investigating your feelings.
Okay, so here's a really great case study from the source material. It's a personal story about the author's battle with some serious pre-speech anxiety. He wakes up at 2 in the morning, the night before a huge talk, and his heart is just pounding out of his chest. But it was even worse, because he was feeling anxious about being anxious, terrified it was going to ruin his sleep. But instead of fighting it, he decided to do something completely different.
He just sat up in bed, and instead of wrestling with the anxiety, he just observed it. He looked at the feeling in his gut without judging it, without trying to push it away. He just watched it. And something incredible happened. As he did this, the feeling started to seem less like a part of him and more like a separate object. He described it as a thick, knotted rope. And once he created that little bit of distance, it lost all its power. It stopped being painful, it became kind of neutral, and then, poof, it just dissolved.
So just to recap, let's pull it all together. We've basically looked at two major ways our feelings can deceive us. First, you've got those obsolete urges. Think road rage or that crazy sweet tooth. They were helpful once, but our modern world makes them harmful. And then you have the helpful illusions, like that jumpy fear of snakes. These were designed to be wrong on purpose, to keep us safe. But now they often just create a lot of new, unproductive anxieties in our social lives.
And this all leads to a really powerful quote from Aaron Beck, the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy. He said, "The cost of survival of the lineage may be a lifetime of discomfort." And that just nails it, doesn't it? It's the ultimate evolutionary trade-off. Our ancestors survived because they were a little anxious, a little dissatisfied. It kept them on their toes. That discomfort was the price of admission to the future, and we've inherited that very same emotional programming.
But, and this is the big but, the really good news, that discomfort is not mandatory. You don't have to live with it. We are not slaves to these ancient feelings. Just by understanding where they come from, by learning to investigate them like we just talked about, we can start to question their authority. We can learn to see through them and free ourselves from their grip.
And that leaves us with one last, kind of mind-bending thought to take with you. If you can observe your feelings, if you can see them as these separate things that just come and go, well, that must mean you aren't your feelings. So the question is, if you're not the feeling, who are you? Who is the one that's doing the watching?